It's tradition in my family that before any celebration meal, my mother offers the first bite of something sweet to the gods, a way of thanking them, a ritual called prasad. Everyone stands quietly while she lights the diya, murmurs a prayer, and places the sweet before the idol. Then, after the prayer is complete, she distributes it to everyone, beginning with the eldest. The rule is simple: no one touches the offering before the prayer ends. It's about respect, it's about stillness. But how could James have known that? Before I continue this story, let me give you a quick background and remind you to subscribe at the end if you like this story. My name is Anaya and I'm Indian. I have been dating James for some time now, and we had gotten really serious with each other. When I first told my parents about James, my mother paused mid-stir over the pot of dal. "He's not Indian?" she asked, already knowing the answer. I shook my head, bracing myself. "No, he's British." The ladle clinked against the pot. "Ah," she said, that one syllable carrying more meaning than a paragraph. "Does he eat spicy food?" I smiled. "He's learning." She didn't smile back. I waited months before bringing James home, not because I was ashamed, but because I wanted it to be perfect. I wanted him to understand us, not the Bollywood stereotypes or the tourist version of India, but the real thing, the warmth, the chaos, the reverence. When my cousin's engagement dinner came around, it felt like fate. My parents insisted I bring him. Told myself it would be fine. He's thoughtful, polite, eager to learn. How bad could it be? On the day of the dinner, I coached him like a soldier before battle. "Take off your shoes before entering. Don't call my parents by their first names. Fold your hands when you say hello, palms together, and say namaste, not hi. And whatever you do when mom prays, just stand still and quiet." He nodded like he was memorizing instructions for a test. "I got it," he said with a grin. "Namaste, quiet during prayer, no shoes, easy." If only it had been that easy. We drove to my parents' house just before sunset. The smell of incense and fried pakoras hit us before we even reached the front gate. Strings of marigolds hung from the door, fairy lights twinkled like fireflies, and from inside came the sounds of laughter, clinking glasses, and Bollywood songs playing softly in the background. James tightened his grip on my hand. "Your family's already here." "Everyone's already here," I said, forcing a smile. "It's a big night." He smiled nervously. "Guess I'm the entertainment." Inside, the living room buzzed with relatives, uncles in bright kurtas, aunties in sequin saris, cousins balancing trays of food. It was warmth and noise and tradition wrapped into one heartbeat. My mother stood near the altar, her sari the color of deep maroon, her gold bangles glinting in the light. My father was beside her, calm and still, his presence commanding without a word. And then there was James, tall, fair-skinned, standing out like a new color in an old painting. The introductions went as expected: polite smiles, curious glances, a few too long stares. My mother's words were kind, but her eyes were scanning, calculating, assessing. My father's handshake was firm, his silence loaded. James tried his best. He complimented the decor, laughed at jokes he didn't quite get, and bravely accepted seconds of spicy curry, even as sweat dotted his forehead. It was going okay. Until the prayer. He didn't get it. The meaning, the rhythm, the silence. The tradition that defined my family and me was something no one outside our world could ever really understand. It wasn't a ritual written down anywhere. It was in the air of our home, in the smell of sandalwood, the jingle of bangles, the soft murmur of Sanskrit verses whispered under my mother's breath every evening at dusk. It was how she offered sweets to the gods before anyone else could taste them, how my father stood quietly behind her, palms together, eyes closed, never speaking until the last flame flickered out. That's the moment James didn't understand. The moment that changed everything. He wasn't trying to offend anyone. He was trying to belong. But belonging isn't as simple as showing up. It's a language, one that has to be lived to be learned. When my mother began to chant, the room fell silent. The flickering diya cast golden light on her face. Incense smoke curled toward the ceiling. Everyone stood, heads bowed, hands pressed together. Everyone except James. He shifted on his feet, unsure. His gaze darted around, looking for cues, but none came. Tried to signal him with a small smile, a tilt of my head, but it was too late. My mother lifted the tray of sweets toward the idol, a small gesture of devotion that marked the peak of the prayer, and in that exact moment, James stepped forward. "Let me help you with that," he said softly. He reached out to be kind, to share the moment, and his hand brushed the tray. It wobbled. The diya flame flickered dangerously close to the edge. My mother gasped. And in one awful heartbeat, the tray tipped. The sweets tumbled onto the floor, scattering like tiny offerings gone rogue. The flame sputtered out. Silence. Heavy, stifling, absolute silence. My aunt froze mid-gesture. My father's jaw tightened. My mother stood there, tray half lowered, eyes wide, not in anger, but in shock so deep it looked like grief. James straightened up, color draining from his face. "I am so sorry, I didn't mean." But no one spoke. For a long, excruciating moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the ceiling fan and the thudding of my heart. Then from somewhere in the back of the room, a voice whispered, "He touched the offering before the prayer." And that whisper spread like a spark on dry grass. By the time my mother regained her voice, the damage was done. "It's all right," she said tightly, but her tone wasn't forgiveness, it was containment. She was holding something back. James looked at me, pleading silently for explanation. Opened my mouth to speak, to tell him it wasn't his fault, that he didn't know, but before I could, my cousin's teenage brother snorted under his breath. Tried to diffuse it. "Mom, it's fine, it was just an accident," I said softly. But my mother didn't look at me. Her eyes were on the floor, where the sweets lay broken. "It's not the sweets," she said quietly, "it's what it means." James looked lost, a stranger in a room that had turned suddenly cold. And as I watched him standing there, his apology hanging in the air like unanswered prayer, I felt something shift inside me. Because love wasn't going to be enough to fix this. Not this time. But right then, all I could hear was my mother's voice, low and steady. "We will finish the prayer later," she said. And with that, she turned away. The ritual was broken. And so maybe was everything else.
I knew the instant it happened that I'd done something wrong, but I didn't know what. One second I was trying to help, the next, the air in that room had changed. It was thicker somehow, like everyone was breathing through water. Anya's mother's eyes didn't meet mine. Her father's expression was unreadable, carved from calm. I bent down, muttered an apology that felt too small for the weight it carried, and when I straightened, everyone was already turning away. The rest of the evening passed in polite fragments. People smiled, but the smiles never reached their eyes. Someone asked about my job. Another offered me more curry I didn't need. The music came back on, but it sounded like background noise to a conversation no one wanted to have. Anya sat beside me, her hand resting lightly on her lap. I wanted to reach for it, but I didn't. By the time we left, I felt like I'd been standing on trial without knowing the charges. In the car, neither of us spoke for a while. The headlights stretched across the empty road and the scent of incense still clung to my shirt. Finally, I said, "I think I ruined something." She stared out the window. "You didn't mean to." "That doesn't change that I did." She sighed, slow and heavy. "It's a ritual. You touched the sweets before the prayer ended. For my mother, it's not just manners, it's meaning." I nodded, trying to understand, but all I could feel was the strange ache of being an outsider again. That invisible wall that no amount of affection could break. "I'll apologize properly," I said, "tomorrow." She nodded, but her silence told me she wasn't sure it would matter. The next morning I woke early, rehearsing what to say. "Mrs. Sharma, I'm sorry, I didn't realize." "No, too stiff." "Ma'am, it was an accident." "No, too formal." Nothing sounded right, because words couldn't fix what I didn't yet understand. Anya called mid-morning. "Mom said she's busy today," she said, voice clipped. "Maybe give it a few days." A few days turned into a week. I didn't see her parents, and though Anya insisted things would settle, I could tell she was worried. She'd start a sentence, stop, then change the topic. I read about Indian customs late at night, scrolling through pages of explanations. Offerings, prayers, gestures. Every paragraph made me feel smaller, like I'd stepped into a sacred place wearing muddy shoes. Still, I didn't want to give up. One Friday, I showed up at her apartment with a box of sweets, the same kind her mother had used that night. "I want to try again," I said. She smiled, tired but soft. "You don't have to." "I want to." She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, dinner at their house tomorrow." The next evening I dressed carefully. No shoes, crisp kurta, palms damp with nerves. Her parents greeted us at the door. Her mother's face was polite, nothing more. Her father shook my hand, brief and formal. We ate dinner together. It wasn't like the first time, quieter, thinner. The food was delicious, but no one asked for seconds. Afterward I stood, holding the box of sweets. "I brought these," I said, "to say thank you and to apologize." Her mother looked at the box for a long time. Finally, she took it, unwrapped it slowly, and set it on the table. "I know you didn't mean to disrespect," she said quietly, "but sometimes meaning is not enough. In our home, we begin and end with prayer." "I understand," I said, though I wasn't sure I did. She looked at Anya then, and there was something in her eyes I couldn't name, love, maybe, but also worry. "When you marry," she said softly, "you don't just marry a person, you marry their world." I nodded because it was true. I just didn't know how heavy that world could be. That night, as Anya and I walked back to the car, I finally asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Do they want you to be with someone else?" She didn't answer right away. The air smelled like rain and jasmine. "They want me to be happy," she said finally. "They just don't know what that looks like for me." Her voice was calm, but her hand trembled in mine. When I got home, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying her mother's words, "You marry their world." I thought of my own parents back in London, the easy laughter, the quiet dinners where everyone spoke in turn. They'd never made me think about where I came from. They'd never had to. Now, I was learning what it meant to step into someone else's world, and how love didn't always translate the way you hoped it would. Weeks passed. I visited again and again, each time greeted with the same careful politeness. Her mother would serve me tea, her father would ask about my work, and I'd feel the invisible wall between us like a thin sheet of glass. Anya and I began to fight in whispers, small things at first. The way I said something, the way she defended her mother, the way I didn't understand fast enough. One night she snapped, "It's not about the sweets, James. It's about what they represent." "Then tell me," I said, frustrated. "Help me understand." She hesitated. "In my family, faith isn't just personal. It's how we show respect, how we honor what came before. When you touched the tray, it wasn't you they saw, it was change. And change scares them." Her words cut through the noise. For the first time, I saw it not as offense, but as fear. Still, fear didn't make it easier. A month later, her father invited me to join a family celebration, a small temple visit for an elder's birthday. It was a peace offering, maybe a test. I agreed. Inside the temple, the air smelled of incense and flowers. Bells chimed softly, chants rose and fell like waves. I stood behind Anya's family, palms pressed together, doing everything I could to get it right. When the priest began to hand out sweets as prasad, he offered one first to Anya's mother. She accepted it, turned, and hesitated before handing it to me. Her eyes met mine. In that tiny pause, something shifted, the distance between us no longer sharp, just uncertain. I took the sweet carefully, bowing my head the way I'd seen her do. "Thank you," I said softly. She gave the faintest nod, and for the first time her smile reached her eyes. Outside, Anya squeezed my hand. "You did it," she whispered. I wasn't sure what it was, but for a moment it felt like the air had cleared. Maybe understanding doesn't come all at once. Maybe it's learned in small silences, one gesture at a time. But as we walked to the car, I saw the way her father watched us. Not angry, not unkind, just thoughtful, as if deciding what kind of man I really was. and I realized something that made my chest tighten. It wasn't just her family I was trying to convince. It was mine, too, the part of me that still wanted things to be easy. Love had never been a question for us, but acceptance, that was a story still being written. Months passed, and the sharp edges of that first dinner softened into stories that people only half remembered. Life had its way of filling the gaps: festivals, phone calls, birthdays. But something had changed between all of us. A kind of careful respect that grew out of embarrassment and apology, watered by time. Anya and I still argued sometimes, though not about the sweets anymore. Our fights had become smaller, more domestic: whose turn to cook, when to visit, what our weekends should look like. Ordinary things. And in those moments I realized ordinary was what we'd been reaching for all along. Her parents began to invite me more often. At first, it was just for tea, half an hour, polite conversation. Her father talking about the weather or cricket scores. Her mother asking if I'd found work busy as usual. But slowly, they started to let me in. I'd find her mother humming while she cooked, forgetting to switch to English. I'd sit beside her father while he watched the news, the silence between us no longer heavy but companionable. One evening during Diwali, everything shifted again. The house was alive with light, diyas on every windowsill, children laughing outside, the smell of sweets and smoke blending together. I'd helped hang the lights this time, learning to tie the marigolds without breaking them. When I finished, Anya's father clapped me on the back and said, almost offhandedly, "You're getting better at this." It was the smallest sentence, but it felt like a doorway. Inside, her mother called us to the prayer room, the same altar, the same silver tray. My heart kicked hard in my chest. Anya noticed. She smiled, that quiet smile that always meant breathe. Her mother lit the diya. The room filled with gold. Everyone gathered, and for the first time, she gestured for me to stand beside her. My palms were damp. I watched as she began the chant, the rhythm soft and sure. When she lifted the tray toward the idol, she looked at me, not with warning this time, but invitation. "Hold this," she said gently. I hesitated. Then I took the edge of the tray, steadying it. The sweets didn't tremble. The flame stayed strong. Her mother's voice rose and fell in the quiet room, and when she finished, she smiled fully, openly. "Now," she said, "we can eat." Everyone laughed, and the sound felt like forgiveness. After the prayer, we sat together on the veranda. The air smelled of smoke and sugar. I turned to Anya's mother. "Thank you," I said. She shook her head. "Thank you for trying again." Her father added, "Understanding takes time. You gave us time." I wanted to tell him that I'd been afraid of not being enough, of making every small thing a test. Instead, I just said, "I'm learning." He nodded. "So are we." Anya leaned against me then, the soft glow of lights catching the gold in her earrings. "See," she whispered, "told you they'd come around." I smiled. Maybe they just got tired of fighting the inevitable. She laughed, a real laugh this time. "Love isn't inevitable. It's chosen every day." And I knew she was right. Love isn't the easy part. It's the repetition of small choices: to show up, to listen, to stay, even when you get it wrong the first time. A week later, my parents arrived from London. They'd never been to India before. The moment they stepped into the house, Anya's mother pressed sweets into their hands. "First bite to the gods," she explained with a smile. My mother, always curious, nodded and copied her gesture perfectly. The room filled with laughter and the clinking of teacups. Two families, two worlds, slowly finding the same rhythm. Later that night, Anya and I sat outside under the last of the lights. "Do you think they'll ever see us as the same?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, but maybe that's the point. We don't have to be the same to belong." The city hummed quietly around us, fireworks in the distance, dogs barking, the smell of something sweet cooling on the window ledge. She took my hand. "The first time you touched that tray, everything fell apart," she said softly. "Tonight you held it steady. That's how it works, isn't it? You mess up, you learn, you hold it better the next time." I looked at her, at the glow on her face, and felt something settle inside me, not triumph, not relief, just peace. "I think," I said, "that's all any of us are really trying to do." And in that moment, with the sound of laughter drifting from the house and the light of a single flame still flickering behind us, it felt like enough.